Welcome to the show. I'm Danella, and here's what's happening now. Floodwaters taking away possessions, even costing lives. Not just here at home, but then also in South Asia. In fact, they're dealing with one of the worst monsoon seasons in history. So far affecting 41 million people there. Death toll, 1,200 people so far. Worst part is the monsoon season isn't over. Here at home, we're all watching now the recovery efforts for victims of Harvey. We're watching them return home, we're watching them assess their damage, and we're also assessing our own death toll here. Leading us to really question, why weren't people told to evacuate? I'll delve into that later in the show. As we were watching Harvey, others were making big political news this week. I'll let you know what you may have missed coming up in Political Pop. But first, I'm tracking a couple stories for you. We were talking about them last week, and I want to give you an update. So last week, remember I asked you this. I said, imagine your child comes home from kindergarten class and talks to you about gender identity. Well, that happened to some parents at a school in Sacramento. Here's what happened there. This is the Rockland Academy School Board. They're now facing tough questions for parents. Parents wondering why they were never told that gender identity would be discussed. Now, this happened a couple of weeks back. This is at the end of their summer school. At the end of class, the teacher there decided to share 2 books with the kindergarten class. There were books based on transgendered identity. One of them is I Am Jazz. And the teacher said that she was given the books by another child there that is a transgender student. Now, here's what the students say. The students said not only were they given the books and they were, read the books in class, the teacher read the books in class, but that the child then changed clothing to reveal her true born identity. And some parents are saying they're grateful to the school, for discussing this with their children, but many of the parents there were very upset. Here's what one parent said. One parent said, the kindergartners came home very confused about whether or not you can pick your gender, whether or not they were really a boy or a girl, right? And here's what a representative of the parents said. She said, these parents feel betrayed by the school district, that they were not notified. I can understand that. I can understand why you kind of want to know what's happening with your child in school. One parent said, my daughter came home crying and shaking, so afraid she could turn into a boy. That's what one of these parents said. I want her to hear from me as a parent what her gender identity means to her and our family, not from a book that may be controversial. Well, the school district said this. The school district said that the books were age appropriate and fell within their literature selection policy. Unlike sex education, they said they don't really need to discuss this with the parents beforehand. As indicated by Superintendent Robin Stout in a communication last week, staff will be engaging parents and teachers in discussions about how materials outside of our curriculum will be addressed in the future, because there was no precedent for this, to date. Now, H.D. Morrison commented on this. He said, if it were his child that learned about gender identity at school, he would be very upset. Personally, when I think about it, I can understand that the teacher wants to be helpful to the class, but I kind of agree that the parents should be open and talk to their kids, unless the teacher is trained, because in this case, more parents were really upset that their kids came home confused. So even though the teacher's heart was in a really good place of inclusion, I'm questioning the methods, because for a child to kind of leave that discussion and question whether they will automatically turn into another gender and what does this mean, it kind of needs to be discussed more than just here's 2 children's books and watch this student change. That's what I personally feel. I do appreciate the teacher trying to be inclusive. However, I do feel for the parents as well, feeling like If you're going to teach something to my child, we should discuss this. I should know. That's what happened there. And if we're seeing it there, I'm sure we'll see it hit closer to home. Also, the other thing that I was tracking for you last week were gas prices in lieu of Harvey's approach. Now, we've seen over the week gas prices rise just a bit in some areas. They're saying that it was barely even 3%. But gas futures, though, that's what we really got to watch out now. They're predicted to soar as much as 7%. And remember, gas futures, that's what predicts how it trickles down to us and what we'll pay at the pump. So here's the update. 14 Gulf refineries have been shut down. Others are operating at a reduced rate. Now, there is some good news about these refineries. In Corpus Christi, reportedly, there's several of them that are actually in the process of starting back up. So that's good news. The biggest problem still in the Corpus Christi area is in other refineries in Texas as well. Here's what they're dealing with, is that even if they're starting to open back up, some of the workers aren't even able to come in yet. That makes sense. So I'm going to keep an eye on that for you as well. So as we're watching now the rescue efforts over the week, and then also now recovery, where you see, I mean, even Pence, man, Mike Pence is out there, moving trees and helping people get back into their homes. Hats off to him for helping, and others, millions. Like we're just seeing so many people. Feels like millions to me, but yeah, you're just seeing so many people not only in Texas but coming to the area. Also, not only sending money, they're also just helping. I've also talked to someone that's living in West Houston. He said that. He actually took in, him and his wife and child, they took in 10 family members. These are his extended family members, but family, man. He took 10 of them in, different people. He said one set of them came over on jet skis. So it's just amazing just to see how so many people are opening up their homes, their hearts, their wallets to help in ways that they can. But unfortunately, I got to tell you, there are some very evil people out there, and evil will not pass up an opportunity to do what it does best, be evil. Here's what Texas officials are now saying. Texas officials are saying that they've gotten hundreds of complaints. How many? 684. That's what I'm counting so far. 684 is what I'm getting. Here's what one convenience store did. I'm sure you might have seen this on Instagram. I think it was Best Buy. I'm going to tell you what this convenience store did in a minute. But Best Buy, you saw they gouged their prices of water up, and people were really complaining about that. Well, listen to this one convenience store. This is in Houston. Reportedly charged $20 for a gallon of gas. $20. And $8.50 for one bottle of water. Well, how much was a case? This is insane. $99 for a case of water. And this is according to the Texas Attorney General's office. And here's what the Energy Secretary, Rick Perry, says. He warns, hey, you thinking about gouging prices? You better watch out. That's what he says. He says every state's Attorney General will be watching to make sure that there's no price gouging going on. That's what he says, and I hope that they are. I hope they have their eyes out. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous, especially in an area, devastated. Stores are emptying out, and you want to charge $99 for a pack of water, a case of water? It's insane. And now it's time for Political Pop. Another crazy week in politics. This week, did you miss that North Korea shot a missile over Japan? It landed into the ocean? Are you kidding me? Into the Pacific Ocean? Who does that? Japan. They had no idea the missile was even coming. What they did was what? It was around like 6 a.m. Tuesday morning. They're notifying all the people of Japan, hey, on their phones, TV screens, posting notes saying, seek shelter. A missile is coming. That's crazy. It's really intensifying this tension between North Korea, not only us, but it seems like everybody. But also intensifying is the case against Paul Manafort. Here's what's happening now. Well, special counsel Robert Mueller, sources are saying that he has teamed up with the New York Attorney general. And so why is this key? Well, they're saying this is key because Trump does not have pardoning power on a state level. So what sources are saying is if they seek charging Manafort on a state level, Trump can't intervene. Well, why is this important? Well, they feel that, well, maybe Manafort will give a little more information on the possible, I say possible, I don't know why I keep saying possible, on the Russian tampering investigation. And maybe they could build an even bigger case against Trump. That's what some believe. I'm just reporting what I hear. Yeah, so fingers crossed on that one. And that is your political pop. And now it's time for In Our World. This week we're asking, why wasn't a mandatory evacuation order given? Why? We're talking about our nation's fourth largest city. Hit hard. Why weren't people told to leave? A lot of us are asking that. And we're going to talk about it here. But before we go to what happened in Houston, let's look at our past. Let's talk about what happened in Katrina. So you remember Mayor Nagin at the time, right? Remember, he's also in jail currently serving, 10 years? That was his sentence. Well, Nagin at the time, he did give an evacuation order. That was the first time New Orleans had ever received an evacuation order. Two major problems. The first problem was he ordered people to leave the day before Katrina was set to hit. So that's the first problem, that there was not enough time. The second problem, if you remember, at that time, there was no real mass transit system there. And then also, a huge part of the population didn't even own cars. Remember that? So people were trying to get buses up there to evacuate people from New Orleans before Katrina hit. So because they weren't able to really coordinate that, that led to the huge, I just can't say it enough, disaster of the Superdome, right? That's what led to that. So let's talk about Houston in particular, because I do feel that in a lot of ways we need to not only learn from our past as we're currently in a situation. So the mayor there, Sylvester Turner, said, you literally cannot put 6.5 million people on the road. If you think the situation right now is bad, you give an order to evacuate, you're creating a nightmare. That's how he responded to why aren't you evacuating? Now, let me give you what one of the residents said. And this was on Twitter. Her name is Camara Franklin. Apparently, she was in Hurricane Rita evacuating. So what she did was put up a picture of what it was like crossing over a bridge to evacuate for Hurricane Rita. For 23 hours, she said 23 hours to get from Houston to San Antonio. And this is what she put. It literally would have taken her, 3 to 4 hours? It took 23 hours. She was stuck on a bridge leaving, right? Trying to get from Houston to San Antonio. That same bridge is completely underwater, washed away in Hurricane Harvey. So again, that's leading people to say this is why we don't send evacuation orders. So that's just what they're saying. I'm going to tell you what I say in just a moment, but let me tell you what the person in charge of evacuation said. So this is, hey, if evacuation is going to be given, who's the person to organize that? Yeah, this is Harris County Judge Edward Emmett. Okay, so he's responsible for overseeing emergency operations. So he said this last Friday. He said, if we wanted to call an evacuation, we wouldn't even know where to call it because we don't know where the rain's going to fall and which watersheds are going to be affected. So there's absolutely no reason to evacuate from Houston or the greater Houston area. That's what he said. Now let me tell you what Governor Greg Abbott said. He said on Friday, even if an evacuation order hasn't been issued by your local office, if you're in an area between Corpus Christi and Houston, you need to strongly consider evacuating. That's what he said. You need to strongly consider evacuating. Here's what I say, okay? First, let's start at what's happening in South Asia, right? Nepal, Bangladesh, India, they're all dealing with monsoon season there. Now, a lot of their loss of life is more because they don't really have the infrastructure that we have in place for search and rescue. They don't really have that. Their budgets, their government budgets can't afford it. You know, we have organized means of search and rescue. Not only do we have it on a government level, but you saw a lot of civilians getting their boats out, going to homes, rescuing neighbors. So a lot of their loss of life is because they don't have those infrastructures. But what they do is evacuate. They do evacuate. What I want to say is this. We've seen in even our history, I mean, Houston alone, you know, they're not totally, you know, unaware of flooding, because even in 1935 they had a huge flood. I think also the other year was, I think 1940, they had a huge flood as well. So it's not normal, but it's not, you know, unheard of, you know. And now we're seeing these storms get bigger, hit harder. And so what I want to say is, and I said it also on the show last week, if you're in an affected area, and let me just caveat by saying, if you have the means to go, maybe you should consider leaving. Maybe you should consider leaving. Because I'm going to tell you, when you hear someone says this is Governor Greg Abbott again. Remember, this is the governor who said, hey, even if you weren't given an evacuation order, you should consider leaving. He put it like this. He said, if he were living in the area, he'd head north. He said, quote, if you have the ability to evacuate and go someplace else for a little while, that would be good. So I'm going to say, if you, family members, anybody, you hear that a big storm, a big natural disaster is coming to your area. You hear government officials say things like, hey, if you have the ability, you should leave. If I were in that situation, I would leave. I think you should listen to that. Because I think it's very clear, because they've said it, that they worry about giving a mandatory evacuation order. They say they worry that people will get stuck and won't be able to get out. That's what they say. And I'm just going to put it out there. Like, I just think that, you know, with all the earth changes that are going on, we have to be a little more diligent about informing ourselves and protecting ourselves. Our government is great at recovery. They are great at recovery. They will try to put energy out there and recover, but they're not so great at protecting. I'm just going to say that. We've seen it. It's not so great at protecting because they say they can't really issue mandatory evacuation orders, right? I mean, shoot, you've seen Trump come down. Trump didn't even step foot in Houston. Trump was on dry land. Melania was rocking hills, y'all, hills. High heels. Not in the club, but in an area hit by a huge, disastrous. I mean, this was flooding unheard of, unseen before. This is where you expecting paved roads? You expecting people to suck up the water? No, you're not expecting to help. That's what it is. You're not expecting to help. So this is why we got to help ourselves. This is why we have to help ourselves. So, one, arming yourself with information, and two, doing what we can, not just for ourselves, but for each other. So, commending all of us that are going out, physically helping where we can. Maybe you don't have the money to help, but you can physically do something. Then praying not only for you, but asking for more of us to do that. And when we talk about money, there's going to be, and we saw this with Katrina, a lot of money coming in the beginning, but it trickles off later. And later is also where we're going to need more money. So I'm just going to say, I I understand that if you're weary of giving money, we saw what happened in Katrina. What I have done on Facebook is posted a list because I had several people ask me about, do I know of reputable places to donate outside of individuals? Outside of donating to individuals. And so what I've done is reposted something that NPR posted. Let me just say, I do feel that NPR does a very good job of vetting out sources. I feel that. I also feel that what they're also good at is if they print something that's not accurate or they find out conflicting news from something that previously was reported, they're fast to get that out. So if you have a chance, you can go onto their website. If you don't have time, you can go onto my Facebook page, Danella, and you can see several sources there, several lists that you can donate to. And again, donations, I know it's back to school for a lot of parents. A lot of parents spend a lot of money on books and clothes, and so maybe a huge donation isn't possible. Could be small. Could be a small donation. If you're thinking about donating an actual item, I can tell you something that they really need, something that they're not getting, that's not provided by a lot of the agencies there, are diapers. They're really, really asking for diapers. Churches, if you guys have that ability to get care packages together, you're nervous about sending money, definite hygienic items, and especially think about diapers for the babies. Yeah, so I'm going to get ready to wrap up my show this week. I just want to say that I'm grateful to you for taking the time out to watch the show. I know that a lot of you guys are gearing up for your Labor Day weekend. Let's continue to not only pray for those affected by Harvey. We got to send prayers out to the world. Sierra Leone's still dealing with the mudslides there. Again, infrastructure is the problem. For them, they're getting injured on even trying to bury the people that are stuck in the mud there. So I just want to say, if you are a praying person, please pray for the world because we need it. We're definitely in a transition. A lot of us are in recovery now. We need all hands on deck, not only prayers, but physical hands if you have them. Maybe you can donate money if you have it. But what little bit we can do, like I said on my Facebook post, no amount of love is too small. So with that, I will wrap up the show. Have an amazing weekend.